Good morning. I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you very much. If you do not have a set of handouts, there might be some that are sitting at tables around you. And if you end up not getting a set of handouts and you'd like one later on, just let us know and we'll make sure that you get one. Oh, thank you very much for helping out with that. And I'm sure that we'll make sure that all of these are available on the Sam's Connect website as well. Our session is about first responders. My name is Carol Seid, and I'm an elementary principal at Fair Meadows Elementary in West Des Moines, Iowa. And I've been a part of the SAM project since 2007. And I have to say that that the implementation of SAMs is the biggest change that I've had in my professional career, which is 25-ish years to date. So I feel extremely strong and extremely positive about the implementation of SAM.
And my name is Steve Seid. We do have the same last name. There is a connection there. We live at the same place. I am principal at Woodside Middle School, which is in the Seid Community School District, which is located just north of Des Moines, Iowa. And I also have been involved with the SAM project since 2007. I have been a school principal for 20 years and a school administrator since 1990. And as Carol clearly said, it has had the largest positive impact on me as a professional educator and my role as a school administrator. So with that, we have a couple of scenarios that perhaps may sound a little bit familiar. We'd like to walk you through these and see what you think. So here we go.
Our own SAMs are not here, so you'll see that very quickly my SAM is Rhonda.
And my SAM is Heather, by the way. Fair Meadows Elementary, this is Rhonda.
Rhonda, hello, this is I'm a Pest, and I want to talk to that principal right now.
Well, hello, Ima. Mrs. Seid is doing classroom observations this morning. Is there something I can help you with?
Well, I certainly hope somebody can help with this. That bus did not pick up my daughter Precious again today. This is the third time she has been late to school. I need to get this girl to school.
Ima, I am so sorry to hear about that, and I know that that is very upsetting, but I want to tell you that we can make that better for you right now, and I know that Mrs. Seid wants to be sure that your daughter gets to school. Now, what bus number does Precious ride, and what time does the bus usually get there?
Well, we'll see if this will help. Hang on just a minute. Precious! What bus do you ride again? All right, well, what time are you supposed to get on that bus? That bus is supposed to be here at 7:30, except the bus, what was it? Bus 8.
Well, thanks, Ima. I will call the bus barn personally and share this with them, and I know that they will get back with you sometime today. I'll also share this with Mrs. Seid because she definitely wants to be sure that all kids get to school safely.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for calling.
That. All right.
Okay, so that might be one scenario. Here may be another one that we experience quite a bit in our role. Hello.
Well, hello. You're at Woodside Middle School. How can I help you today?
I'm here to see the principal. My name is Mr. Fundraiser, and I would like to talk to him right now, if at all possible.
Oh, well, welcome, Mr. Razor. My name is Heather, and I'm looking at Mr. Seid's calendar, and I don't see that you have an appointment today.
Well, frankly, I was just driving by, and I saw that there was a school here, and I thought that I would stop and talk with Mr. Seid about my one-of-a-kind fundraiser program.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Well, Mr. Seid is actually meeting with teachers right now about the instructional time on task during their stranger danger lessons. And if you leave your information with me, I'll make sure and share it with Mr. Seid at our meeting later this afternoon. Actually, typically our student council handles all of our fundraising, so I'll make sure and share that information with them as well. And if someone at school is interested or needs more information, they'll give you a call right back.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Well, obviously those are a couple of scenarios, and it can be a menu of those types of things that we are confronted with on a daily basis. So we'd like to share this morning about those first responders and who typically will handle those scenarios and how we divide those opportunities out for those people in the office.
Our purpose today is to make sure whether you are new to SAM or whether you are experienced with SAM, one thing that we've found that has been extremely important is to have first responders, a team of first responders who are identified, their roles and responsibilities are clear, and that is the way that we found that really helps to facilitate some of those management kinds of tasks and duties. So today our purpose is to be able to share some examples and resources with you. We will also give you a chance to create, or if you've already got a first responder team, have a chance to review that, maybe revise your first responder team, and then have a chance to take a look at an action plan and have the opportunity to think about developing your own action plan to facilitate the implementation of the first responders in your own setting back home.
So, actually, Carol wanted me to do my very poor Andy Rooney imitation. I'll do my very best with this next slide. Have you ever...
That was it.
That was it.
Just saying. That was it.
Oh. The eyebrows. Have you ever heard, I just have a quick question. Or, have you ever been asked, do you have a minute? Or, have you ever been able to tell what time of day it is by who is standing outside of your office door? Obviously, those are possibilities that we've run into, and with that, we want to share with you some examples of how you address those kind of situations.
I'm not sure about your situation, but at Fair Meadows, we have just occasionally a few parents who we call HMPs, high maintenance parents. They take pride in considering themselves helicopter parents. They want to know about every teacher, every lesson, every activity, and if they have any questions at all, they do not hesitate to fire off 10 emails to you, to the teacher, to the superintendent. You'll get phone calls all hours, day or night, with the expectation that you are right there ready to go at their beck and call. And if you don't have a set of first responders, or if you're haven't been a part of SAM, then this can be your high maintenance parent, your helicopter parent can really be a time loser for your principal. Another scenario may be someone who can be what I call sly like a fox. And they may be someone who is used to having immediate and direct access to the principal at all times. So when you implement SAM, and your focus as a principal is, or as a SAM, is to help the principal have more time focus on instruction, then this person, and I'll be honest, for me it's a staff member, they were used to having access to me at any time. So the implementation of SAM was kind of an interruption to that. So without SAM, this staff member who is, I consider the sly like a fox, this was one of my time losers as a principal.
So as a time loser as a principal, obviously with the SAM project, you are trying to absorb additional time for instruction. And these are examples of those situations where the principal becomes a time loser. Another example of a time loser situation for the principal is when you have a staff member who it's during their planning time, and because they have completed all their planning, now their time is now yours. And they feel as though because they have some spare time, you perhaps will have some spare time, so they can come in and talk to you about their upcoming surgery, perhaps the puppy that they are just going to be getting, or even in fact their vacation plans. This is a time loser situation for the principal. I, as a matter of fact, had a supervising superintendent that their hope was for me to be in my office waiting for the next thing to happen, and not being out in the classroom. In fact, was frustrated with me if I wasn't there to receive that phone call when they decided to call and ask me a question. So that became a time loser for me as well.
I'm hearing what you all are saying. My question is, what did you all do to change that dynamic?
Thank you. She's with
That's
us, by the
exactly-
way. She segued that in, and that's exactly where we're going with this. Do you have a handout? Okay. Okay. The question was, if you couldn't hear, how do you address those kinds of things? And that's the purpose of us giving you those examples, because what we have found is that this is nothing new. These are kinds of things that happen to principals all the time. And so how do you absorb that time back?
And once again, this shows that being able to make sure that you, as you implement SAM, there are time winners, but there are time losers. And those time losers, and some of them you may not even realize until a situation comes up. And now all of a sudden you need to recognize that that person is, this situation is been created because they didn't necessarily have information about roles and responsibilities that have changed or shifted as a result of SAM. And honestly, for a time loser, there could be an attempt to actually sabotage SAM and its efforts. So we want to make sure that to put that at the forefront, because if you're not aware or thinking of that, then all of a sudden you could find yourself in a situation where you're having to really backtrack and take a look at some basic foundations of some communication.
So the next few minutes we spend together, we'll be discussing how to develop a plan and how to implement that, how to share that with the people that you work with, your community, and then as also share that plan with teachers so they know who the first responders are and who they go to for those specific needs.
When we developed our first responders and listed those roles and responsibilities, what we found is it really clarified the protocols and procedures for others. For example, I had a staff member in my office at the time who wasn't necessarily thrilled about the implementation of SAM. When we had our roles and responsibilities, it became clear to everyone what her responsibilities were in the office versus someone else's, and if she was a first or second or third responder. So then it became less likely that that person's going to be able to say, I have no idea who's supposed to be doing this now, with this new SAM thing. So there's some ways to clarify some issues or be proactive in that way to avoid some of those issues. It clarified for my parents. What I found is a lot of my parents really just wanted to know who should I go to for this after they had learned about the SAM implementation itself. So that helped clarify for them, for my staff members. The other thing is for my colleagues at the district level, whether it was other principals or the central office staff. They weren't necessarily sure, do I call you? Do I call Rhonda, your SAM? What do I do? So it kind of clarified that. It really helps communicate the focus and the intention of the principal and my vision. And I find that putting it in writing really made it more transparent, more concrete at the same time for my whole community, so that the entire community can see the shift that I want to make for my instructional leadership and for my school and community.
So the next part in your handout, you will find some documents that Carol and I have put together that divided and
I think this is the second page after,
clarified what those responsibilities would be and which first responder would take that role. Now, interestingly enough, even though Carol and I live in the same household, we found that our lists were significantly different. Certainly there were some things that were similar, but things vastly different. We came to the conclusion after quite a discussion that in our particular case, it went to elementary versus secondary. Example, at the secondary level, and perhaps some of you can understand and relate to this, when a student comes to my office, or the office in general, and they need to see the nurse, they need to see the counselor, and they need to see the assistant principal, whomever that might be, my SAM screens that student to decide where they need to go. Accountability is very important. So they have to sign in, the student must sign in, and then the SAM directs them to where they must go. So if you look at my form there, you'll only see 3 first responders. Myself, Heather, my SAM, and then Marcia is the attendance clerk that has additional duties that are described in that paper. And then if you look at Carol's form, you notice multiple first responders.
Actually, and then what I did is I just designated my office team. So that included myself, Rhonda, my Sam, our lunch clerk and attendance secretary, which is Helen, and then this particular document also talks about my health assistant who is working in the office for actually most of my week. So this document really, there's some situations where you can see there's someone listed as first, someone else is listed as second. So for example, if Rhonda isn't in the office, she might be the person listed first to answer the phone. If she's gone, then it would go to Helen. The last person in that office team that I want answering my phone right now would be Kathleen. First of all, she's my person who's not necessarily all that thrilled about the implementation of SAM. She likes things the way they used to be. So I sure don't want her as a first responder for an initial conversation, either with someone coming in, unless I absolutely have to, unless there's nobody there, and I don't want her answering the phone saying, she's never in here now, I don't know where she's at. You know, because that can happen if there's somebody who is not necessarily, either they don't understand the purpose for SAM, or for whatever reason, it's not something that is a positive for them. So those are some things. The one thing that I think is really, really important, because this is a document that we would share with multiple people. It went out to first, our office team, and then we talked to our staff members so that they had an idea. If you wanted to know about copies, here are the people to go to first, second, third. But so they needed to have that information, as well as the parents. Once again, I have a strong parent-faculty club, our version of PTA. And they wanted to know about SAM. I was very transparent, sharing the implementation of it, sharing my data, my goals for SAM. So then there was some confusion initially of, okay, so who am I supposed to go to in the office? Because before implementing SAM, there were a certain number of, not all, some of those helicopter parents who would typically expect to be able to see me when it worked for them. And that would be, at their convenience instead of what was happening in my schedule.
So regardless of the size of school that you represent, regardless of whether it's elementary, middle, or high school, a document like this becomes very important and critical so people know exactly who to go to as for those first responders.
The other thing I think is very important is that we list our roles as the principal. It's not like we're sitting around giving everybody else jobs to do while we're twiddling our thumbs. Because this is a public document, I wanted to make sure that my staff, my community, my parents, my colleagues understand that still my focus and the roles and responsibility that I have as a principal and that Steve has as a principal are first and foremost always. So that's the purpose for having that designated there.
So having gone through those, and feel free to keep those, I want to ask that you flip to the next page of your handout, which, sure.
The third list you have one for Steve and one for you in terms of assignments for first responders, etc. The third list is a duplicate of those with all of them in one place.
What we've tried to do, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit, but try to just give you some examples of possibilities,
Yeah,
knowing
tho-
that these are just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, those are just samples. As we work through this morning, those might come in very handy later on.
In your handouts, you should have what I call the Fab Five, and you may have seen this if you are part of SAM Readiness. But what I'd like you to do is take that out, and if you've not developed a first responder list yet, or if you already have, bless you, if you already have the first responder list, it might be a good chance for you to review or possibly take a look to reflect and maybe need to revise your first responder list. So what we're going to ask you to do is rate the principal's role in this, and well, I'll back up. The Fab Five are those big 5 management indicators that Sam has found that have created they've been the largest issues of management through the SAM data. So when you look at the first question there, which is dealing with student supervision, is your principal usually involved in student supervision in non-instructional areas, sometimes involved or rarely involved? And if you have a first responder right now, who is that? So if you have that sheet in front of you, please go ahead and think about where your principal would fall in that, rarely, sometimes, or usually, and then write down the name and position of your first responder there.
And if you are here, a principal SAM team, feel free to do that together. If you are here as collectively as a larger group, feel free to work that together as well.
And we'll take a look at each one of those questions.
So as you're looking at number 1 on that Fab Five, if you'll also look at then question 2, which the management is the student discipline and behavior management. So if you would consider who that first responder is for that situation, and if the principal is usually, sometimes, or rarely involved.
I think we might be out of copies, but we've got electronic versions, and we'll make sure that it's on the website. I can, if you see us afterwards, and give me your email, I can shoot all these documents to you in an email.
So working through this, you have an extra?
You have an, oh.
So working through this, then, if you would now go to question 3, which is defined as supervision of non-teaching school staff. Who is the first responder in that management issue for your situation? And is your principal usually, sometimes, or rarely involved with that?
Did you run 2, 3? Sorry. So that was question 3.
In question 4, the management task is school facilities, maintenance, scheduling, cleaning. In your building or situation, who is the first responder for that management situation? And also, is your principal usually, sometimes, or rarely involved? And then finally, on that Fab Five, the final question in the task is defined as interactions with parents about non-instructional matters. Who is the first responder for that management situation? And is the principal usually, rarely or sometimes involved. And as you're completing that and working through it, as Carol said, these were the 5 management tasks that were the most defined through the SAM project. Now, reflecting back on that as you complete it, if you would look at those responses that you marked, and if you would look at who could be that first responder in your situation other than the building principal.
Another thing to think about is what happens if that person, even if it's not the principal, which hopefully for these management issues, many of you have someone different than the principal, but what happens if the person that you've marked is gone? You know, where's your second responder? So you kind of think about who would be next in line. Because if you have one person, they're gone, then your next person is the principal, then a lot of times it ends up, you know, people will go right back to where they were before, and the principal is usually, at least sometimes are usually dealing with a management issue.
Do you all think it's really helping to make that switch of helping people to recognize the first responders because you all are communicating with your SAM, those SAM meetings, you know, just so that your SAM can be assessed what they might need to know?
So,
I think that's a great,
can we repeat the question?
yes.
Kinda.
No, not you. We want to be sure that everybody hears your question. Yeah.
So really what you're asking is if you feel that part of the reason or the communication that we've done and the communication that the SAM has done, our SAMs have done, have helped with this being able for people to figure out where they need to go? Is that what?
Communication between you and your SAM, it allows your SAM to be able to help as a first responder. So
Okay.
going back to that meeting with the SAM principal every day,
Uh-huh.
you know, so as a first responder, we are prepared to be recognized and appreciated in that role so that people will want to keep coming back and maybe spread the word like we do. When we hear something get out in the community, we tell 10 more people, and
Yes.
it gets around.
I have to, you know, that's exactly, you know, and I shared, my SAM and I have been a part of this since 2007. Initially, it was a little bit difficult, not a lot for me, but a little bit difficult for me to, you know, let Rhonda get all those, you know, those pats on the back for fixing those pencil sharpeners or those things that, you know, sometimes if that's the only thing you're going to get all day, I'll take a pat on the back for a pencil sharpener. You know, to be able to make sure that Rhonda had those, you know, my SAM had those opportunities to be recognized for the work that she was doing. Because that's important too, it has to get done. And that's, I'm going to jump to the next slide because it kind of addresses that. But what I ended up coaching my SAM with now is because she took on a lot of those and became the first responder. Then all of a sudden, I took my big, you know, big burden of management, and she took a lot of that in addition to what she was already doing. And so instead of her taking on all of that, I needed to help her begin to see, you know, other ways to delegate too. Because what will happen is, instead of creating an issue where your principal is dying, you know, burning out because there's just too much to do in too little time, I don't want my SAM to have that same issue. So that was another excellent reason for having those roles and responsibilities. It can't just all go to your SAM, because then your SAM's going to just be buried under that. So that's where the bottom line is somebody's got to do it. So the listing that and I believe it might have actually come out on 2 pages. I apologize for that. That I didn't realize when we sent those. But and I've just pulled a little snippet of those things. There's a whole host of things that we've come up with, and we know that that's just the tip of the iceberg for us. Each building is unique, your context is unique, the things that you do and the things that your first responders do is immense. So we didn't want to do anything more than just kind of jog your memory. Oh, our first responder, someone in the office does this, or we don't do this management task, but we have this. So it just kind of, it helps you to begin brainstorming the kinds of things that you can have delegated. So that's the purpose for that. And this is just an example, a little brief snippet from that handout. Some of the kinds of things that are management tasks that you can take a look at when you're creating your first responder team.
I do want to comment also on your question, because in my situation, the district office and my building are physically connected. So there was a convenience in my estimation, for the superintendent to have me very available, because I was several feet down the hall. The focus was management, very much so with my former superintendent. Did a great job, but that was the focus. There was quite a learning curve to ensure that if she needed to contact me about things, she needed to go through Heather first. That was a big shift in thinking. For my superintendent to get to me, needed to contact Heather, my SAM, or set appointments with my SAM. And it worked. But there was a learning curve, to say the least. But it's worth it. Even my superintendent knew what those first responder responsibilities were. So having said that, the next sheet in your handout is a sample of secondary first responder system. And as you peruse over this, you can see the specific areas on the left-hand side as samples or examples, and then who the first, second, and third responder might be for any one of those areas. Now, certainly there are several that would be listed 1, 2, and perhaps 3. But you may also notice that there are a couple there that there is just one responder. The first responder for purchase orders is Shauna. That's it. You don't want a lot of people in that specific area. So Shauna is that first person and only person. Budget and finance near the top is S. Jenks. So that gives a little bit of an indicator on how all that is divided and who those first, second, third responders are.
There's also an elementary sample. The biggest difference there is that instead of areas, in the secondary example, there are specific management tasks. So for supplies, you might want to start with Tracy, and most of these names are made up. Your second responder would be, if you don't see Tracy, if Tracy's at lunch, if Tracy's gone for the day, then you know that your second person to go to is Helen. If you have to have something right now, you don't see them, you know Janet can help you. So just those kinds of things, and have that posted and shared with your staff especially. That's really, really helpful.
The next slide that you have, actually two pieces of that handout. You have one paper there that is listed as the management task, and then first, second, third, fourth, fifth responder, because some situations may be fairly expanded. There's also one that just has first, second, and third responder. So what we're going to ask is that you keep that and take that back with you. And do we have time?
I think we could at least.
Maybe if you were able to jot down maybe just 5. I wasn't sure of our time. We started a little late. But if you could select 5 management tasks on that left-hand side. And you
can go back and look at the examples that we've given from the sample sheets, the listing there. And what we've tried to do is create a couple of options for you. Whether you may have 3 people, you may have just you and one other person as a first responder, you may have a host of people that you would consider first responders for your team. So we've tried to create something that's flexible enough for your particular situation, so use whatever works for you in that handout.
But think about their tasks and what their position is. Are they the principal? Are they the SAM? Are they the nurse? Whatever they might be. So in those management tasks on the left, if you could select 5 of the samples that we gave, and then who those responders might be from left to right.
What we'd like to do is, if you are in teams, if you could work on this, this might be a great time to just begin to start brainstorming some of those things that we need to take a look at when we're back home as far as first responder, second responder. And what we'd hope that we could do is give you between 3 and 5 minutes to take a look at some of those and share a couple of those out just to be able to help some other people and maybe jog some thinking there for other teams back at home too. So we'd ask you to be ready to share out a couple.
I think everybody's really got comfortable with this idea of redirecting folks and taking care of resources. That's the second part of that. Do you notice that from year to year, that process may change? Because if you come in, obviously, but I'm really talking in terms of parents who tend to come in at the drop of a dime sometimes when they have concerns.
Yes.
It's something that I'm a Sam, okay?
Uh-huh.
I'm finding that when they come in, I got to redirect.
Yes.
Kind of shield this more than that. But, it's a relatively new thing at our school. So I'm finally like, I got to go back to the well again.
Yes.
I got to reiterate again.
So the first part of your question was how long of a process did that take to make that shift?
Right.
At Woodside Middle School, it took the bulk of the first year,
Really?
where there was a real comfort level in knowing who was the first responder and how all that worked out. And frankly, part of that was the principal, because we had been schooled to be very thrilled to accomplish all these management tasks in a given day. And it seemed as though the instructional component took a back seat. So before that really was a comfortable shift, I would say it was a good part of the school year. Now the second part of your question was parents coming in and how all that, the comfort level of those people coming in, and did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, because to me, that's another transition process with your parents.
Yeah, and in that document that you have that's a public document, that's a first way to let parents know, but it's also so critical for the SAM to, as someone comes in, to be that first responder and know the language of what that involves. For example, I want to see the principal, Mrs. Seid or Mr. Seid is in the room. How can I help you? And absorb those things and make that parent feel as though whatever problem or concern that was, they're leaving with it solved. And knowing that in those daily meetings that the principal still is made aware of those, and if necessary, we'll follow up with those phone calls, those emails, whatever the case may be. We're not immune to those management things. We still know about those. It's just that our Sam, Heather, and Rhonda are the first responders for those.
It's funny because in that deflection process, I had given out my cell phone numbers. Like, so Bear, guess we just called.
Yeah.
So some of them I've gotten used to. Look, you really want to find out? I'll cut you the chase and direct you where you need to go. See, it's a learning curve.
Absolutely. And I will say to you, for the first probably 2 years, every monthly newsletter that went out, I had something in there about Sam, the expectations of Sam for me, and the expectation of Sam for my Sam, and how all that was in progress. So that lasted for a while, and then it just became part of the culture.
Right. That's nothing in mind. Do what you got to do, and you can change the culture.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Sure, anytime. Yeah.
I think we've got some examples. Is there anyone who would want to share one of the management tasks that they had listed in their first and second, possibly a third responder? I know I asked a couple of people. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
We have some things to work on. My name's Stephanie, this is Stephanie.
Welcome.
We have lots of things to work
You know what? It never is it? It's a journey.
Yeah, and one of the things that we need to work on is in the area of purchase orders, who it goes to, who approves it, so that there's just a first responder, because right now there's 3 or 4 people in the first. So, but we're also working on this, my 2 assistant principals just became Sam assistant principals as of January.
Oh, so you're in a transition.
So
Wow.
this first responder list is more important than ever. because
Exactly.
We're going to shift some of what they respond to first now. So.
Yes, so especially when people make transitions and you have additions or now roles have changed. You're right, exactly. That's a wonderful opportunity to really clarify using the roles and responsibilities in that first responder, second responder. And with especially the example you gave with the purchase orders, there might be a situation where too many people dealing with something just makes a big mess. And so a first responder might be all you want. And it's nice to have something like that in writing so that you can be able to say, this person is the person. And that also helps that person be able to tell someone else, thanks for your help. This is what I'm supposed to do.
And it is critical that you involve all those people in those decisions for those responder assignments, just to be sure that you have the confidence and they have the confidence in fulfilling that responsibility as well. You want to make sure it goes smoothly.
In an area that we recognize that also needs attention is the idea of who do you call for discipline-related issues?
Yes,
Because team
that's a biggie.
leaders have a radio, and they call the central office or the assistant principals, and with only 2 grade levels, each assistant principal is the house leader, so they are responsible for that grade.
That's also a great example to talk about different contexts too. You have a different concept, the structure of your building is different. So student discipline,
And then teams and 3 teams
Yes.
within the grade level. But, and yes, we have our PBIs, our whole discipline flow chart. What has happened over time is that we haven't always reinforced or enforced the policies and procedures in place. Therefore, as we all know at home, first thing you do is open your mouth before your eyes. So it's like, Mom, where's my socks? Well, so people are going on radio and going, like, can an administrator help Johnny refuses to do this? Well,
as opposed to following the protocol that's already is supposed to be established.
right, and therefore we're finding that the instructional leadership, the amount of time available is reduced because they are answering the mom call.
Yes.
So we're going to work on developing that and also develop scripts that when you respond to
Yes.
a call to come help Johnny because he won't blah, 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 how you can clearly and concisely convey a message that says, did you do this, or point to something very specifically so that they know what they're supposed to do. They can check with themselves, did I do this? And if not, who do I go to? Because you never want to leave them, you never want to say no.
Exactly.
But you also don't want to waste a lot of words or a lot of time. So that's one of the things that we're going to work on, first responder, second responder, and in actuality, we have most of it in place. It's
Good.
just that we become too lax, and we need to reteach it to our teachers. We have to teach what we expect, and then we need, as the leaders, to enforce what is there. And then, hopefully,
The tools at the very end of our session, the next things that we'll share might be extremely valuable then as you develop that plan. So I'll touch base with you again. I know we had a couple of other examples. Thank you.
I work at the high school area office, so our office oversees all the high schools in the district. One of my big things is parent phone calls. What is really nice about our high schools, we actually put in place, I believe, the year before we started the SNAP process, is that our assistant principals are over specific areas. So if I get a parent phone call about a schedule, I know that I talked to this assistant principal, or a parent
Yep, that's good. And it's nice to have a central office point of view too. Thank you.
Any-
One more.
I work at a high school, Harvard High School in Chicago, and the way we have it set up for our first responder, anything non-instructional related to the car, we use the main office, and we consider that our central office within the building. So anything non-instructional, it comes to the main office, and then they filter it out to where it needs to be. So anything that has to be, maybe pencils, supplies,
Yep.
or just a phone call, we have the ladies in the main office that handles those things. And as we meet with Sam, I will pretty much be the first responder for them, as well as the first responder for the principal. Now, we fit in our assistant principals in that part. They're more so with the instructional part. So anything like, our world language teacher has questions regarding, syllabus, and they will go to the assistant principal and ask the first responders. Now, for whatever reason, they can't get that done, then it will be me and go down to the first responder. But most likely, our APs are very good at answering questions and get it done, so they never do it.
Good.
But we use the main office as our central office, and that operational and the buildings.
Interesting. That's good. And once again, the context being so different and unique, it's nice to be able to hear those. So thank you. I appreciate that.
And you can see the importance of having this in place.
Yes.
For example,
Writing.
here we are. And somewhere, school is in session.
For some of us, that might be a little scary.
So that it's paramount that this be in place. People know what it is, what it means. So things can go business as usual while we're doing things like this.
Okay. The last piece today, and this I think is really where, this is where the rubber meets the road for me. This is an example, it's a sample all written out of a readiness, SAM readiness, but it's implementation and communication. So this touches base on what one of the questions was all about. I really like that on this form it lists all of the people involved. So anyone who is a part of that first responders is listed on this form. I really like that there's a specific timeline that's established so that there's some accountability already built in. The strategies and activities are specifically noted. There's a timeline for each of those, and this is another way to make sure that you've got that accountability built right in. There's an evaluation and monitoring piece. How are you going to know that this has happened? How are you going to know the effectiveness of this? What do you expect the results to be? So, for example, and this example deals with the implementation of the first responders. You know, making sure that your faculty is informed about the SAM project in general. Oh, thank you.
I only have two.
In this particular action plan, they're going to send an email about that. They use their tech director to monitor the emails when they're open, when they're read, so that way there's an idea, there's an accountability piece built in. There's a timeline to that. Who is going to be responsible for making sure that happens? This is one example. They developed their first responder list. They included the SAM and their building leadership team in this decision. They're looking for the number of school people reporting concerns to those first responders. They want that to increase. They also want, the expected results are also that the time that the principal's spending on those management issues will decrease. So that would be the intended result. Ultimately, in this plan, they're taking it to their staff, they're taking it to the parents in the community, and they're having the first responder list posted in all common areas in the building. That's one example. What I'd like you to take a look at is you've got a blank template in your handouts so that you can develop your own implementation plan. Doesn't make anything that we've shared right or wrong. It might work for us, something different. Obviously, there are some things that work for me that don't work for Steve. Some things that work for him that I would change. So nothing is perfect, nothing is right. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, if you have concerns, let us know. If you would like to have an electronic version of these to be able to mess with yourself, let us know. We've got our email addresses here, but thank you very much for your attention.
We would like to say thank you
Good.
to Mark
Thank you.
Schellinger for all he does for the SAM program. He does a great job. And personally, we'd like to thank Carol Lensing, who is our time change coach in the back. We appreciate what she does. Like Carol said, please ask us questions if you have any. We'd be happy to help in any way. So we appreciate you being here. We appreciate the opportunity of sharing just a little bit about first responders. So
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great lunch.